Welcome to Animal Posse, the podcast dedicated to the people and rescues making a difference in the lives of animals. Today's guest is someone whose work hits close to home for me as a cat rescuer. I'm talking with Matt Wildman from the National Cat Behavior Helpline, the place people turn when they're overwhelmed, confused, or desperate to keep their cats in their homes. I know firsthand how critical that kind of support is, and Matt is one of the voices on the other end helping prevent surrenders, solve behavior problems, and keep families together. I'm grateful to have him here today to talk about the hotline's impact and hear some of the real stories behind the calls. Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh, yes. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm very excited about this too, because as a cat rescuer, this is something that I'm very passionate about. I think it is an absolutely wonderful resource for people because there are people that have cats that have major behavior problems. They don't know what to do. And so they think about surrendering their cats. So I love that this is there to help those people and also for people who are new to cats as well.
Exactly.
So tell me how you got started and how you came up with the idea for the National Cat Behavior Helpline.
Okay, sure. Well, let's see. So back in 2010, I was working with a surrender prevention program under the Humane Society of the United States, which is now Humane World for Animals. And one of the services that this program offered people was we had a certified cat behavior consultant who, for free, would assist people with cat behavior challenges. And I didn't know anything about cats at that point. I'd been around cats, but I didn't know anything about their behavior, but I was very intrigued. Her name is Beth Edelman. She's wonderful, and she's a certified cat behavior consultant. And for 3 years, I was mentored by her, and I read everything I could, and then became a cat behaviorist in my own right. Previously, I had been a teacher for 8 years at a Brooklyn public high school, and I say that because what I was able to do once I worked for the Humane Society of the United States, now Humane World for Animals, but I love teaching, and what I was able to do is utilize that teaching. I created a course. This is back in 2013, and it lasted to 2016. And the course was meant for shelter personnel to become essentially trained cat behavior counselors to assist their own shelters. And about 250 shelter personnel went through the course, and it was very successful in that regard. But what we found is that just the nature of animal sheltering, there's a fair amount of turnover. It's a very high stress job. And just the nature of life, people come and go from jobs. And what was happening was the shelters would have somebody who was trained to handle cat behavior cases, whether it was from fosters or adopters or members of the general public who potentially would surrender their cats. But once that person left, then the shelter was left without a resource. It'd always been in the back of my head to start a national helpline because in a way, when it comes to surrender prevention, cat behavior counseling is low-hanging fruit in that unlike dog training, where you really need to be with the dog and be with the owner and working kind of hand in hand with them, with cat behavior counseling, you could do it on the phone. In almost all cases, it can be done. It can be phone-based, and it requires no funding or anything of that sort. So it's, in a way, very impactful with few, if any, resources needed other than time. Anyway, I'm just in a life situation now where I had time to develop this helpline. We launched it in March. We first began reaching out to shelters and rescues, just cold contacts saying, hey, we have this helpline, it's free, and you're welcome to refer any cases you have, again, whether they're fosters, recent adopters, or people calling from the public who are potentially surrendering their cats because of a behavior issue. So we've been doing it since March. It's been really successful in that we have about 40 shelters at this point who are sending us calls or have agreed to send us calls. And we have 5 trained cat behavior counselors and myself. And in the last couple of months, we've handled about 75 cases or so. And our goal is to ultimately handle thousands and to have every shelter referring cases to us, as well as just by word of mouth, and to have ideally a couple dozen trained cat behavior counselors staffing this helpline. So it's coming together very nicely, and we're very excited moving forward.
Where did you do your training to get certified?
There's various ways to become certified. For example, there's one called the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants, the IABC. I have not gone through that because I never I've always done this other than when I worked for Humane World for Animals, where they just paid me a salary for this work. I've never wanted to charge anybody for offering advice. So for that reason, there just was never really a reason for me to go and get officially certified. It requires just a variety of coursework and doing a number of case studies, all of which I've done probably tenfold, but there just was never real reason for me to go through that route. It just happened a little bit organically in that I was mentored for 3 years by a certified cat behavior consultant and given every book I could possibly read on cat behavior. And then at this point, I've just done thousands of cases. There didn't seem a reason to get certified through that route because it isn't necessary for where I am at this moment.
How does the helpline work? Are you available certain hours? Do people call and leave a message?
So we have a email address. It's felinehelpline@gmail.com. And what we do is through word of mouth at this point, like we have a Facebook page. Some people are reaching out, just individuals or members of the public, but primarily it's through shelters and rescues. So a shelter rescue will, let's just say, a recent adopter has contacted them and say, the cats are hiding and I can't find them. So what they do is they just provide us with the adopter's contact information, a very brief blurb about what the issue is, just so we know what it is going in. And then we will first text the cat owner to just arrange a time to speak. And then within 48 hours, we'll have a phone call with them. And so at least at this point, there's no phone number. It's just we're emailed, and then we utilize our personal cell phones to call people.
How many volunteers do you have helping you?
So we have 5 at the moment. Over the past 2 years, I developed a new, or pretty much a revised cat behavior counseling course for Humane World for Animals. So it's a self-paced online course. It's probably about 20 hours worth of work. So these are our current volunteers, who are just an amazing group. They either have previously took the course and they've been doing cat behavior counseling, so they are very experienced. And then we have a couple of volunteers who recently took the course. And in addition to taking the course, there's a number of case studies that the volunteers have to do. And then we review all them. And just to make sure that by the time they're handling cases, they have all the knowledge and the skills they need to handle these cases. And of course, I'm there to support our volunteers if there's any particularly challenging cases where, if they want to review and if there are challenges in making an assessment or with the advice to offer, we collaborate a lot on that.
Is that course available to anybody? And is there a charge for that course?
No, it's a free course. Yeah, it's available to anyone. Anyone can take the course. You're not in any way committing yourself to volunteer for the helpline. It's just if somebody is interested in volunteering for the helpline, the first step is that they take that course. And if you just go to, I believe it's humanepro.org, there's information about the cat behavior counseling course, or you can just Google cat behavior counseling course, Humane World, and it'll come up.
Yeah, because I think it's a great resource just for people involved in cat rescue in general. That's a great thing to have. I mean, I've been doing cat rescue for about 20 years, and I'm pretty good with a lot of behavioral things, but then there are still things that come up for me that are quite challenging.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I spoke to somebody yesterday who had many cats. She was just an older woman, and she'd had many cats throughout her life and had done rescue. And this was the first time that she ever had a case where just 2 cats were not getting along at all. But we get that a lot, where people have had cats for years, and almost inevitably at some point, there's going to be a behavior issue. So we're there as needed. There is another resource that I also created, which it's not quite as intensive as the cat behavior counseling course, but still extremely comprehensive. It's called the Guide to Cat Behavior Counseling. It's about a 45 or 50-page document. I created it. It's published by Humane World for Animals, and that's a free guide. You can download it. So if you just Google Guide to Cat Behavior Counseling, that'll come up. And it's a very practical guide for how to handle pretty much any cat behavior case that may come up or situation that a person might be dealing with.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to go check out both of them, actually. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time, but I still don't know everything. So it's always good to get new information.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What we find also in this helpline, and actually what the course and the guide to a lesser extent discusses, is the counseling aspect of cat behavior counseling is extremely important. So, of course, we need the knowledge and the skills and awareness of how cats behave. But almost as important is how to talk to somebody who's at their wit's end with their cat and extremely frustrated, let's say, with a cat peeing all over the house, or just very upset with two cats who are consistently fighting or not getting along. And so a lot of it is helping people get out of that crisis mode that they're in, reminding them of their love for their cat, giving them some hope that this can be resolved, and really presenting ourselves as an ally. So it's not just like a person calls and we just ask a bunch of questions and assess and then advise. There's a real interpersonal component to it. And that's very important also because one of the reasons we feel that a helpline is very important and it's a really valuable resource to the animal sheltering world is that it does take time. The first initial phone call might be anywhere from like 25 to 30 minutes, sometimes longer, but follow-up calls are almost always needed. And that's why it's so important to establish a good relationship with the cat owner so that they feel comfortable reaching out and saying, hey, we're making progress, but we're not all there yet. Or I did all your advice and it seems there's still an issue. So let's continue to problem solve. Or in some cases, the person just has not taken any of the advice just because, let's say, life got in the way and they were in crisis mode. They're no longer in it. And we just are there to gently encourage people to implement the advice so that the problem resolves. I worked at several animal shelters and very familiar with just the intensity and the amount of work, and it's consistently putting out fires. And there's really typically not the time for a shelter staff person, whoever they may be, to spend half an hour on the phone and then make follow-up calls and do all that work in addition to everything else they have to do. So the helpline is really there to be this kind of companion resource to support animal shelters.
From my personal experience, if somebody contacts me about rehoming a cat, of course, I'm going to try to provide all the information to get them to keep the cat. And you can try to be as empathetic as possible. And I find that they still try to shut you down right away. They might be wanting to give you a cat that's peeing all over the house. And it's kind of like, well, if I take that cat, then that's a behavior that I have to address to correct as a cat rescuer. And not that I'm not willing to do it, but that's something that is very, very time consuming. So if we can guide you to do it, then the whole situation might be solved. But a lot of the times I find that they're just not open to that. And so I think it's really good knowing how to reach people.
Yeah, to go with your example, right? A person calls, they're obviously calling because they're extremely frustrated at that moment. And they're probably, even if you had the time to, okay, let me stop what I'm doing and see, and let's say this person is willing to try to resolve the problem, you're probably not in a situation at that moment where you can be like, oh, I've got 30 minutes to do this. If you're doing rescue, I'm sure you're doing a million other things. So the nice thing with the helpline is when we're referred the call and then we text and make a time to talk, the person usually, when we're speaking to them, is not quite in that kind of perhaps frantic state or just a very upset state where they're actually making the call to try to give up their cat. One thing we ask shelters, and it's proved very successful, is so if somebody is prepared to surrender their cat because of a behavior issue, we advise shelters to ask the question, if the behavior issue could be resolved, would you like to keep the cat? And that's subtle, but that's often a better question than, let's say, we have somebody who can help you. Do you want to keep your cat? Because at that point, they may not want to keep their cat. But if it's framed in terms of if the behavior issue was resolved, would you want to keep your cat? Often people will say yes. And that's an in for then the shelter personnel to say, great, we have a resource. It's free. And they'll contact you within 24 to 48 hours and hopefully resolve the problem.
So how many people have you helped so far since you started in March?
We've had about 75 cases, probably roughly a quarter have been resolved successfully. There's a number that are just the nature of it are still in process. The volunteers are trained to follow up until the case is resolved. So there's a lot of cases we have right now where progress is being made, but we're not 100% comfortable saying, okay, this is a closed case. We want to make sure that the cat has gone, for example, a month without avoiding the litter box, or the two cats have gone a number of weeks without any real negative interaction. So typically an average case might be a month or two before we really feel like it's resolved. And of course, there's some cases where, fortunately, they're relatively few, but possibly the behavior issue has gone on for so long that it's a pretty intractable problem and it's going to take a lot more patience than, let's say, the cat owner is prepared to give at the time, or it's the person is looking for help, but the situation entails more work on their part than they may want to do. We're also prepared, the volunteers are trained to deal with this. Not every case is successful, though certainly I would say the large majority are. Just also dealing with sometimes some disappointment, and not every case is resolved as we would want it.
And what are the top behavior issues?
Yeah, the top behavior issues, avoiding the litter box is probably number one. Inner cat issues, whether it's a new cat being introduced or just ongoing tension amongst cats, or sometimes redirected aggression where two cats got along fine and then there's something frightened one or more of the cats and they redirected their agitation on the other cat and it became a problem. And then an overarching issue, which sometimes is a problem in and of itself and sometimes just is contributing to the problem, is the understimulation of cats, just cats whose energy needs are not being met. And that can lead to behavior issues such as they're trying to dart out the door because they're bored, or they're vocalizing at night, or waking their person up early. I had an interesting case yesterday with, again, a cat owner who did rescues, had cats for decades. And this is the first time that one cat was seemingly bullying the other cat. And it really was a matter of this one cat who was younger than the resident cat. Just his energy needs were just not being met at all. So the cat was viewing the older cat as a play object, essentially. And it can be, when you're witnessing that, it often seems that the cat who is being play aggressive with the other cat is being outright aggressive. But that's usually not the case, especially if they're spay or neutered. Sometimes there's territorial issues, and sometimes there's cats who simply cannot live with other cats, but those are rare. Much of the time when there's inter-cat issues, there's a component where one cat is understimulated and is viewing the other cat as a play object, which can be very stressful to the other cat. And that's not across the board. Of course, there are just genuine times where two cats are having issues because of territorial issues or redirect aggression or something like that. But in kind of a common thread amongst a lot of our cases is just cats who are not getting enough playtime, and it's leading to be unwanted behaviors.
I know when it comes to having a multi-cat household, most people at one point or another have had issues with the litter box. Of course, if somebody comes up to me and mentions it, the first thing I'm always going to tell them is go get your cat to the vet, because that's the number one priority. You have to make sure it's not a medical issue. But when it comes to actually solving a problem that is behavioral, can you give us some tips on how you would walk a person through that?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that. One big part of cat behavior counseling is being very practical. And we always need to be very thorough and give the best advice possible. And this goes back to forging a connection with the cat owner. We want to be mindful of people's time limitations, of their financial limitations or potential financial limitations. So yes, when typically the kind of rule of thumb is if there's a litter box issue, let's get the cat to the vet first. What I've found is, and certainly if it seems like in just talking to the person, the cat is having a medical issue, seems out of sorts, is not eating as much, is vocalizing when eliminating. There's 30 other things I can mention. But if there's a clear sign that this cat is in discomfort or there's a medical issue, of course, we first and foremost refer to the vet. However, there's many cases where in talking to the person at length, it seems that it's probably not a medical issue. Or if it is a medical issue, the cat certainly does not appear in any distress. So for that reason, and again, if we're talking about a person who's calling and they're at their wit's end and they're not even sure they want to keep the cat, if they're told you first got to go to the vet, first of all, it could be very stressful, as we know, getting cats into a carrier and getting them to the vet. There's fair amount of money spent at a vet, and the cat owner may not have that or may not want to spend that right away. So we look at the full picture. And of course, refer to the vet first if it seems necessary, but often we'll try other tactics and other strategies to see if we can resolve the problem, which is often the case. And of course, if not, and we think a medical issue may be the reason and we've ruled out others, we'll refer to the vet. But again, want to make clear that if there's any sign of discomfort or cause to think this cat is having a medical issue, we do refer first and foremost. So I have a framework called the 4 Reasons Cats Avoid the Litter Box framework. Very straightforward name. And this is talked about on the cat behavior counseling course and the guide to cat behavior counseling. But essentially, there are 4 reasons cats avoid the litter box. There are medical reasons. And into that, I lump if a cat's not spay or neutered. There can be a problem with the litter box setup itself. There could be an environmental stressor causing the cat to avoid the litter box. And there can be cat issues amongst cats or other animals in the home where one cat, let's say, does not feel comfortable going into the litter box for whatever reason with the other animals in the home. Those are not mutually exclusive reasons. It could be a cat's avoiding the box it would be unlikely, but for all 4 of those reasons, or for 1, 2, or 3 of those reasons. But it's a very useful framework to assess litter box cases. And one of the reasons I developed this, both the guide to cat behavior counseling and the cat behavior counseling course, is because in my experience, and I was certainly guilty of this before I became a trained cat behaviorist, was a lot of the times it's like throwing advice against the wall and seeing if anything sticks. So it'll be like, my cat's avoiding a litter box. And like, have you tried adding a box? Have you tried this litter? Have you tried peel away? Have you tried, I don't know, the varying the depth of the litter? All of which can be very good advice. But for us, we do a systematic study in talking to the person of what's going on and then provide our advice accordingly. So this framework is very good in both formulating the questions we ask and then guiding our assessment and guiding our advice. And the volunteers are trained to do that. And every single litter box case, I do the exact same thing and trying to determine or rule out if it's a medical issue. Is it a problem with the litter box setup? Is there some kind of environmental stressor causing this issue? And or is there an issue amongst cats or other animals in the household leading one or more to avoid the box? So when it's viewed in those terms, in that framework, what often seems like a mystery or just seems too overwhelming, like where do I even begin to try to figure this out, becomes much more manageable. And when I explain it to the cat owner, much as I just explained it now, and they're like, oh, that makes sense. And it just provides a really easy means to try to figure out what's going on.
And what about the cats that has one of those urinary complexes? It's FLUTD or FIC. Do your tips help those cats as well? Because I know a lot of the times with those cats, they'll go outside of the box and they find weird places to go, like a blanket, a towel, your clothes, or sometimes even the sofa, because it's more so that they're trying to avoid the litter box because they associate it with pain.
The first step would be to go to the vet to get diagnostics and hopefully determine what's going on and get the appropriate medication. There are cases like there's something called idiopathic cystitis, which basically is the cat is experiencing discomfort when eliminated, and it's unclear as to why it's happening. There's no obvious source. There's no obvious medical reason, and there's no obvious behavioral reason. And those can be tricky because often the cat will sporadically eliminate around the home. And sometimes there'll be days or weeks where there's no issue at all. And then all of a sudden there'll be days or weeks where it's a big issue. So a lot of that is, first of all, that's where kind of the cat behavior counseling, the counseling aspect comes into it. Sometimes, and I've had cases where sometimes the case was not actually entirely resolved. It's just, let's say, a very complicated case and the cat is still maybe not eliminating 10 times a month around the home. Maybe it's down to 2 or 3, but it's still 2 or 3 times the cat's eliminating around the house. But the person, in talking to them, now has somebody they can really talk to and an ally, and they feel supported and they feel validated in their frustration. Because a lot of times cat owners, they may not have other people to talk to who really understand their bond with their cat and their frustration with this. And sometimes even people who are living in the household with the primary cat owner are either not that interested in the cat or very much want the cat to leave if there's a behavior issue. it's hard to overemphasize the importance of establishing just a strong connection with the person we're talking to on the other end of the phone and being an ally for them. And that sometimes you can almost feel through the phone the relief of having somebody they can talk to about this and somebody who's going to support them. So there's that. And of course, that doesn't in and of itself solve the problem, but it's an important component to it. But a lot of times, let's say with idiopathic cystitis, like stress can be certainly a trigger for that. So we talk about ways to decrease the cat's stress, to increase playtime, which is a great way to decrease the cat's stress. Sometimes there's supplements. There's a clinically proven supplement called L-theanine, which is actually used for humans to reduce stress, but is also known to reduce stress in cats. So there's various advice we can give people to try to help in these situations. But certainly if there's a medical issue, the first step is the vet, and hopefully they're able to determine the medication needed to resolve the problem.
This is always something I hear from potential adopters. A lot of adopters are always looking to adopt females because they always say the males spray. And I always laugh, of course, because all the cats and kittens that we adopt out, they're all spayed and neutered. We don't let them go out without first being spayed or neutered. And the only time I ever had an issue with a cat spraying, it was a female. She was spayed, and I got her when she was a bottle baby. So that's one thing I always laugh about, because I'm like, the female cats spray too. So what is something that you would tell people, or something that people could do for spraying? Say they get a kitten and it's fine, and then all of a sudden they start spraying all over the house.
Assuming they're spay or neutered, as you said, a female spayed cat can spray, a male neutered cat can spray. Of course, if they're intact, especially the males, are much more likely to spray. So it's a matter of, if they're spraying, there's some kind of environmental stressor going on there. So we talk about ways to either eliminate that stress. So sometimes it can be, I had a case where there were several cats in the home who were spraying on the front and back door, which is like classic sign of spraying when there's outdoor animals around. So, there can be advice given anywhere from, there are outdoor cat deterrents so that the cats are not right by your front door. There's ways to deter the cats from, let's say, going right near the front door. So, for example, like one method, which is pretty simple, is if you take like a car mat has like little spikes on the bottom of it so it sticks to the carpet in the car. So there's various items like that, which cats, they don't like walking on little sharp objects. It doesn't do them any harm or anything. But that's a good way to deter a cat, like from, let's say, going immediately to the front door, because they just can't access it if there's something in their way. So there can be deterrents like that. A lot of times it's a matter of reducing the cat's stress through interactive play, ensuring that they're on a routine, which can help a lot with stress. So there's a variety of different measures we can take with a cat who's spraying, and it sometimes can be medically related as well. But typically there's a stressor, and it's a matter of either identifying the stressor and certainly providing advice so that stress is reduced.
When you tell these people to use these deterrents, is that something that would have to be in place permanently? Or is that just like a temporary thing until you get the cat out of the behavior?
A lot of times the cats are habituated to the behavior, and then over time it can be removed. And that's also, again, why we talk about the importance of follow-up. If the cats have been spraying on the front and back door for months, as they had in this case, it's not likely to just be resolved overnight. So, typically with that kind of case, I'd want the cats not to have sprayed for at least a month before removing the deterrent. But each case is unique. But again, that's why the counseling aspect is so important, because the follow-up is just essential. So right now we have a number of pending cases, which seemingly they're resolving, but we need to give it a little more time to ensure that's the case.
Let's say somebody sends you an email with a behavior problem. How much time do you tell them that they're going to have to devote initially to solve this problem? I know each case is different, but what is an average?
The bulk of the time that they'll have to spend is if they need to do more interactive play with the cat. So whether it's a matter of one cat who's bullying another cat, or one cat who's showing some play aggression to people, like swatting at their legs, or not in aggression as we think of it, but more just they have all this energy to burn. So a lot of times in those cases, the cat really does need 3 15-minute play sessions a day. And then each play session is followed by a meal. And then you have a cat who tends to be relaxed in between the play sessions. So in those cases, we'll talk to the person and say, ideally, you could spend 3 15-minute play sessions with your cat. Often what I'll say, because that can be overwhelming if they've not been spending any time, I'll say you can multitask when you're doing it. So you could be on the phone while you're using a laser light with your cat or a fishing rod toy or something like that. And also, like with the deterrent, I'll say to people like, look, we just want to figure out how much energy your cat has and what it's going to take to use up that energy so that the behavior issue resolves. And what I'm asking you to do is, if you can, for at least several days in a row, try 3 15-minute play sessions a day. Let's see what happens. Assuming the behavior gets better, then of course, it's up to you to decide how much time each day you want to spend. But at least we know, okay, this is what this cat needs. And in some cases, the cat needs more than is unusual, but sometimes cats need 4 or 5 play sessions a day. And we always frame it so it's not overwhelming to the person. So to answer your question, those cases would be where upwards of 45 minutes a day the person would spend with their cat. But we also frame it as, don't think of this as forever, especially with the person who's thinking of giving the cat. We don't want them to think, okay, now they've got a 45-minute commitment every day. Let's just see if it's going to resolve the problem, and then we can talk about next steps. Similarly, with let's say a cat's peeing on a couch routinely or peeing near a windowsill or something, and it seems like the cat really has a preference for the living room to eliminate in, and there's no litter box there. And a lot of times people do not understandably want a litter box in their living room. But if we think that will help to resolve the problem, we'll say to the person, look, let's try it. Let's see if it works. It's certainly easier scooping a litter box in your living room than to cleaning a couch that's been peed on. But let's see if it works. And if it works, then we can talk about whether you feel comfortable enough keeping the litter box in the living room. But what we found is in those cases, when it comes to playing with the cat, once the behavior issue is resolved, because they're adequately playing with their cat or they've put the litter box where it needs to be, I'd say 90% of the time, the cat owner is in a different state of mind. And they're like, yeah, I can deal with the litter box in the living room, or it's really not too bad to play with this cat 3 times a day. So we try to make it so it's not overwhelming. And that also goes to this idea of practicality. I had a call yesterday where the cat had been the mother's cat. The mother, unfortunately, passed away recently. The person seemed like a very decent person, but they were not tremendously bonded to this cat, and they were not going to do a tremendous amount of work. This cat was avoiding the litter box. Maybe there was 10 pieces of advice I could have given, but I chose, let's say, the top 4 or 5 I thought were really going to be the most effective, and which he was actually going to do. Because if I inundated him with advice, I knew it was not going to happen. He just was not in a place where he was going to make this a big commitment. So there's just this real practical component to it, which again just goes back to forging a really good connection with the person on the phone.
I really want to thank you again for having this resource. It's just such an important thing to have. I know when I get those calls or messages from people, I will definitely refer them to you. And I'm going to include your links in the show notes as well to your self-paced online course and your guide to cat behavior counseling.
And one other thing, if you don't mind, if I could just mention, as the helpline grows, we're definitely in need of more volunteers. And the nice thing about being a volunteer is you really don't need any experience. You'll go through a significant amount of training to get to the point where you can handle cases on the phone. And it's an extremely rewarding and high impact experience, knowing that you're keeping cats in their homes. So if anybody is interested in potentially volunteering, all you have to have is a love for cats and a love for people and wanting to keep them together. You can also email me at felinehelpline@gmail.com, and I can give you the information.
You have a website as well?
So we are working on our website. We're actually a program of an animal sanctuary called Safe Haven Farm Sanctuary, which is in upstate New York. We're going to have a page on their website, which their web developer is soon to have up, but it's safehavenfarmsanctuary.org is the organization that ultimately is sponsoring this program. But our website should be up there hopefully within a week. Our web page.
Thank you so much for taking the time to go over this with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh, no problem. Thanks so much for having me. Much appreciated.
That's it for today's episode of Animal Posse. If you love what we're doing, please consider becoming a member. Your support directly helps us continue highlighting the people and stories that save lives across the country. Just a quick reminder, the views and opinions expressed by our guests are theirs alone and are provided for entertainment purposes. They don't necessarily reflect the official position of the show, and this information should never replace the advice of your own veterinarian. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bars in the night, claws in the fight, whiskers twitch and tails take flight. They're calling in stories to spin from the wild to the heart within. Broken wings and hopeful springs, we're the voices for these things. Animal Posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal Posse, saving them all. The vet's got tips, the rescuer's grit, the foster homes where love won't quit. From a pup in the rain to a bird in pain, every soul's worth the strain. Animal Posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal Posse, saving them all. Every caller tells a tale, every howl a whispered wail. We rise up, we never fail. This is the bond, the holy grail. Animal Posse, hear the call. We stand together, big and small. Rescue tales, we've got it all. Animal Posse, saving them all. Every caller tells a tale, every howl a whispered wail. We rise up, we never fail. This is the bond, the holy grail.